Eastern Economic Forum, where Putin spoke, barely has anything to do with the economy, but is fun to watch anyway. Dmytro Kuleba leaves the position of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Can Poland shoot down Russian missiles? Or better asked, will it do so? These topics in more detail with me, Henry Keane, and UATV English doing our best to break out truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Well, you know what? Let's have some fun. I picked some cutouts of Putin's speech for you from CCD, that is Center for Countering Disinformation, article online. These guys did an excellent job of dissecting Putin's delusional narratives. Well, let me explain them for you in easy and, I hope, fun terms. Let's go. On geopolitical views of the Russian Federation, Putin said the world should be multipolar and fairer and not depend on a single country's dictatorship. It is necessary to respect the interests of other countries, regardless of their territory size, GDP volumes and the availability of modern weapons, says Putin, and invades Ukraine. In Britain, continues to complain Russian Tsar, the procedure of electing the head of the state is not democratic at all, as it is established within the framework of the dominant party, and the people are not engaged in the change of government, says Putin, and desecrates Russia's constitution, anointing himself for eternal reign. On the anti-Russian sanctions and economic situation, Putin said, due to Western sanctions policy, businesses are being shut down in Europe, and global inflation is rising. The latter is increasing in the West and decreasing in Russia. Confidence in the dollar, the euro, and the pound sterling has been lost before our very eyes, says Putin, and sells oil for the dollars, the euro, and the pound sterling, as no bank in the world accepts ruble that shrinked fivefold compared pre-war dollar and counting. On the grain crisis, food procurement by Western countries is pushing up prices and will lead to an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe in the poorest countries. Europe continued to adopt its colonial practices and delude the poorest, says Putin, and just bombs Ukrainian ports of Odessa, burning hundreds of thousands tons of grain that were supposed to be sent by Ukraine to Africa. On Russia's energy blackmail in Europe, our gas pipeline is far more competitive, says Putin, than LNG, and currently Russia has no problems with implementation of its energy suppliers, particularly in China. Nord Stream 2 was built for a reason. If necessary, we will switch it on immediately, says Putin, and immediately finds out that Nord Stream 2 is currently out of order. And on the war in Ukraine, of course, the Russian Federation is ready to face different challenges, including the US's constant supply of new weapons to Ukraine, says Putin, and loses Kursk and the region. And the last one, if you will, my favorite. The consequences of the war cut off all unnecessary issues and only strengthen Russia's sovereignty. Since February 24, the Russian Federation has not lost anything and will not lose anything, says Putin, and just ignores 600,000 Russians killed in Ukraine on his sole demand. Well, who counts Russian cannon fodder in Russia anyway, right? Worth noting here just one thing. Answering the question on the war in Ukraine, Putin just notes that the idea of the forum is not that, and Ukraine is irrelevant. So what we can say about Putin that he never misses a chance to boast, and where is no reason, he just invents one. So what was it then? No even invented reason for boasting, I might suppose. Dmytro Kuleba left the position of the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Andrei Sybiha takes the position. Well, let me explain the thing in easy terms for you. And that would be easy, as there is nothing to explain. Staff shifts in the Ukrainian government are an internal matter of Ukrainian government and should not be any relevant to anybody else. What is, was, and always will be relevant for us in Ukraine and EU and America is to maintain good ties regardless of the composition of our respective governments. This was noted during a briefing in Brussels by the EU Foreign Service representative Petr Stano, commenting on the changes in the Ukrainian government and, in particular, the resignation of Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba.
This is, of course, something not for the European Union to comment. We don't comment on domestic decisions which are related to staffing or appointing people responsible for government or public posts. However, what is important for the European Union is to have always good and reliable partners on the other side. So that means it is important to have good and stable governance, and we hope that we will be able to continue very good cooperation with the new Ukrainian counterparts in the same way as we did with the outgoing ministers from the point of view of the external affairs and foreign policy. When it comes to Foreign Minister Kuleba, I can only recall the appreciation the High Representative Borrell holds for Mr. Kuleba, for everything what he did for Ukraine and for everything they did together. If you remember, Foreign Minister Kuleba was a regular guest to the Foreign Affairs Councils in their formal and informal formations. There was very frequent communication and coordination between High Representative Borrell and Foreign Minister Kuleba, and we can only praise Foreign Minister Kuleba for everything what he did in the testing and very hard times for Ukraine.
Ukrainian parliament approved Andrei Sybiha for the position of the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Before that, he was the first deputy minister, experienced diplomat. Previously, Sybiha held the positions of attaché, director of the Department of the Consular Service of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ambassador of Ukraine to Turkey, and deputy head of the President's Office, Andrei Yermak. When you see a burglar that is about to break into your neighbor's house, and this very burglar is doing that not for the first time. You see this burglar every single day breaking in neighbor's house, ruining and burning things, spitting on any norms of morality and all the laws. And you have all the means, I mean military and legal, to stop the burglar. Would you, Poland?
Personally, I believe that when hostile missiles are heading toward our airspace, it is legitimate self-defense to shoot them down, because once they cross into our airspace, the risk of someone being injured by debris becomes significant. Radoslaw Sikorski, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, in a comment to the Financial Times.
Well, for any reason you like, Mr. Sikorski, just already please do it. Help us and help yourself, Poland. Down Russian missiles for the sake of both of us. Well, NATO, sure. NATO has recently responded to your calls to shoot down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory, and they said while members of the alliance have the right to protect their airspace, they said such actions, could have consequences for the entire alliance, they said. So NATO has no reason and is afraid of consequences. And what about almost 500 murdered Ukrainian children? Does that count as a reason yet? Or while Ukraine is not NATO, and so our children are not a reason enough for NATO to finally find its balls and do things it has been created for? The question is NATO a military alliance after all, or a bunch of librarians looking for an excuse not to act? Is it a force of justice, or an alliance of negotiators and appeasers, of monsters and not fighters, who at any cost would prefer to deal with a thug indicted by ICC than dealing a blow to his army of criminals murdering Ukrainian children every day? Well, while NATO hesitates, negotiates and appeases, so not only to have consequences, I suggest Poland could absorb some of Putin's tactics. Yes, in terms of not caring about NATO. What happens if Poland downs Russian missile, after all? NATO would express its deep concerns. So, well, Ukraine can express a way deeper gratitude in return. So in easy terms, way to go, Mr. Sikorski. Let us together change NATO to the better. Let us all together build a firewall in Europe. Because obviously we all need that, even if some of us are afraid to admit it. Well, that was it for tonight. It was me, Henry Keane, and UATV English, doing our best to deliver our truth in easy terms for you. Please like, share, subscribe and comment. Become vocal, as it in turn helps the Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. Please stay safe and tune for more already tomorrow. Goodbye.